Hello, my name is Mark Goedkoop and I'm presenting also on behalf of my colleague Ilonka de Beer. Together we are the team that leads the Product Social Metrics Roundtable. You may have heard of that. The story I want to go through with you is the challenge we posed on ourselves as a roundtable, how to fulfill the requirements of the Commission if they want a method to support their policy making. This discussion started in 2019, last year, when the Green Deal emerged and we saw that there is also a lot of attention to social impact assessment. Now, the Product Social Metrics Handbook you may have heard of. All these things are transparent and downloadable. There are now three guidelines, and the roundtable has been run by these companies you see here on the screen. And what I'm presenting is basically the result of a discussion with those companies, and we have then summarized that in a short policy paper. The key requirements came from a keynote presentation on the Lifecycle Management Conference by Michele Galatola. He basically spoke on his own behalf. He was saying clearly that it was not the officially standpoint of view of the Commission. I should mention that. But it sounded quite logical that these are important requirements. The method should be science-based and data should be verifiable. It should be easy to apply even for SMEs, quite tough requirements, I think. It should not become a trade barrier, which is a risk, of course, because a lot of social impacts seem to occur in developing countries. And it should be applicable on circular economy strategies. Now, you can translate, or Mr. Galatola translated these requirements into methodology issues. What's the correct baseline? So how good do we want to be? What is the current, how to include positive impacts? How to allocate the social indicators to products and services? Which indicators can be made actionable today and should be on a quantitative or a qualitative basis? Now, the baseline is something we have thought quite long about. We have in the handbook a 5-point scale, and the 0 level is basically the baseline. It's the compliance with the local laws, or if there are no relevant local laws, alignment with international standards. We try to define that a bit further in the handbook. I will skip that. The other one is how to deal with the positive impacts. Now, as you can see, we have a -2 and a +2 level. And we think this seems to work for both the negative and the positives. So the lower one is the risk area. There you have a detrimental effect on social well-being. Basically, it means you're not compliant, you're breaking laws, you're below accepted standard. Or in the -2, if there is no data, we also score that as a -2. Then we have the compliance level. And then we have an output level. That's a level where companies or supply chain actors are actually contributing to social well-being. And we base this on the theory of change, a well-known concept from social science and some management practices. The theory of change says you can put money into something, that's an input. You get an activity, you get training. The output is trained people. The outcome is people start to use what they have learned. And the impact is their life improves. Now, it's difficult to measure impact, although how we would really love to do that. For instance, one reason is that between input and impact, there can be a time lag. It can take quite some time before you actually start to see the impact of your investment. So we rather measure on the output or outcome level for the positive impact. So it is really about progress beyond compliance, and which is hopefully then contributing to a better world. It seems to work. Then challenge 3, how to allocate impacts to products and services. This is actually a known problem for environmental LCA. You can often find the energy consumption for a whole factory, but it's difficult to allocate that to a production line. For this, it's important to understand how we collect data. On the right-hand side, you see we collect performance indicators like Is occupational health monitored? And a number of these other indicators are used to calculate the score on, for instance, health and safety. So we don't ask people to fill in the 5-point scale on health and safety, but we collect data on the performance indicators. And these are indeed often only defined per company or location or site. So we have an issue. It's not unique to Social LCA, but we think we can work with this. Then the challenge is which indicators can be made actionable today. Now, we have already done quite a number of case studies, about a dozen, and we are still producing them using our handbooks. And they are actually also on the website of the, although there are summaries on the website of these cases. And indeed, we have issues. We are not there. We can say, yes, we are actionable for a few of them. And here I put in a kind of the baseline clear question, and is it applied in cases? And you see some pluses, some equal signs where we don't really know, and a minus for freedom of association and collective bargaining. The problem is, for instance, that in different cultures there's a very different view on this. We have also the issues for users. We have, for instance, health and product safety, where we think we are pretty close to having a standard. For the rest, the baseline is a bit unclear, and not all topics have been used in cases. Local communities, we haven't really got much experience. It's quite difficult to find data on local communities. It's even difficult to define what we actually mean with local communities, who they are. And the small-scale entrepreneurs, like smallholder farmers, we do have a baseline clear for a few topics, and we have actually applied this in a number of case studies, but we also see that we have difficulties in defining. Basically, we're working on that. In the 7th year of the Roundtable, we are going to make an update on these scales and references and a better definition, also based on this analysis. So hopefully we can solve that in the future. Then the last challenge was, should we be quantitative or qualitative? Now, this is really a struggle, because we have, in the first version of the handbook, we had both. We had a quantitative and a qualitative version. But when we tested it, it seemed to be quite difficult to get quantitative data from actual suppliers somewhere in the supply chain. Companies who do a good job may want to tell you, but companies who do a bad job will certainly not give you any numbers. The number of slaves, for instance, you won't get. The other question is, how useful is it to know the number of slaves? We simply want to know, is there slavery, and is there something going on to prevent that? So we have dropped the quantitative version, but we also realize it's difficult to work without quantification, because for instance, you cannot aggregate all the 5-point scales over the life cycle. So that's why we came up with the idea to combine the relatively ease of data collection with the 5-point scale with the need to be quantitative. And for that, we have now a collaboration with CIRAIG, who is developing a proposal or a first experiment that links the 5-point scales to monetarization value. And there's another presentation on this topic by CIRAIG in this conference. So the conclusions are, what is the correct baseline? Well, it is really an important value judgment for which we are not sure if even we are the right person to set that. We think we have a workable solution that sounds reasonable. It should be further clarified, and sometimes our definitions are not too specific. But we also hope that we get input from policymakers on this one. The positive impacts, I think we don't have solved that, more or less. It's in the qualitative approach, at least, it seems to work. This +1 and +2 level seem to work. The allocation of social indicators to products and services, It's not the biggest challenge. It's a bit similar to environmental LCA, but it is a factor that adds to some uncertainty. The challenge 4 we are asked to look at is which indicator can be made actionable today. Well, we have an indication, but we are not sure how far we are. But we also realized it is not only the issue of the companies that has to supply the data, it's also the company that has to frame the data, ask the data in the right way, and get access to the sources. And we call that the capability maturity development within the company. So also the companies in our roundtable are trying to improve better ways to find data, to make references, and to learn that. And that's in our implementation guide. You can also download that. Quantitative or qualitative, I just explained, both have their merits. We think for the SMEs, the quantitative way is out of scope because it's too complicated. We also really need a quantitative approach, and that's why we recommend to listen to the CIRAIG approach. Then finally, if we go back to the policy requirements, it should be science-based, the data should be verifiable. I think we have both the Social LCA Alliance and the Roundtable have developed a transparent and non-proprietary method, so anyone can use it, anyone can shoot at it, criticize it. And the transparency of the data is an issue because a lot of companies don't want to tell about their bad behavior, of course. Easy to apply. We think the reference scale method seems to satisfy that requirement so far. It should not become a trade barrier. That's really a bit out of scope for us. It depends on how the Commission is going to apply it. And it should be applicable on the circular economy strategies. Although we know this is like opening Pandora's box, circular economy can have so many meanings. We think it can work. So we have a chapter on that, and we are also working on a case to see if that works. That was my presentation. Thank you very much for your attention, and I hope this was clear.